This week on the Pete the Planner Show, we answer your money questions because that's what we do. Of course, you can have those questions answered by doing one of the following things. You could either A, call. Don't do that. It's actually not a choice. It's a fake choice. You can't call me. Please just email us. Ask Pete at PeteThePlanner.com. There's this big email box. It's huge. I've seen it. And it's filled with your questions, and we take those questions and we answer them. And we've been getting a lot of questions about marriage and money recently, which means people are either wanting to be happy or they're not happy. I don't know how any of that works. And I know a few things about marriage, but I would never claim that because anyone who claims that, who is not an actual expert, they'll end up divorced. So I brought in an actual expert for you today to answer the following question. What are the best ways to talk to your significant other about money? Her name's Christy Fox. She joins us now. Hello, Christy.
Hi, Pete. How are you?
I'm excellent. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Is this a career low light for you?
This is a career highlight.
Oh, well,
yes.
Aim higher. Okay, so you are a marriage and family therapist. Give you your own title because I'll mess it up.
So I'm actually a licensed clinical social worker, but
Okay.
I do marriage and family therapy.
Okay, a licensed clinical social worker, but you also do therapy.
That's correct.
Counseling.
Yes.
Is there a difference between therapy and counseling?
Same thing.
Same thing.
Same thing.
All right. So here's the you talk to married people all the time in couples counseling.
Yes.
Is your job to just always say the husband's right?
No.
Okay. Well, I was just saying, like, I probably won't go to your counseling.
That's okay.
So you were there and you help people work through things, and I gotta imagine money ends up being part of this.
As you can imagine, and we all kind of know this,
Yeah.
but money is the biggest thing that couples fight about. So
You think number one? What are the other ones?
I would say sex,
Yeah.
in-laws, family dynamics,
Sure.
Children.
Okay.
parenting.
Money, sex, in-laws, and children.
Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like a great rock band. Like if you're going to like Coachella, where
Right.
my producer Nicole likes to hang out. Nicole, would you listen to a band called Money, Sex, In-Laws, and Children?
I feel like that would be one of those shows that I just ended up at in the
Yeah.
middle of the day, not knowing what's
Yeah.
really going on in front of me, but it's there.
So that's what you deal with.
Yes.
What's the best thing that for someone that obviously we're raised by different people,
Yes,
which is a good thing, because then your in-laws are not your in-laws, are your family,
Yes.
because everyone's. What are the best practices?
So here's what I would tell you for couples that come in my door, there's conflict about money. A lot of times it's from different upbringings.
Yes.
So you come from a family where maybe money was tight. You come from a family where there was a lot of money. You come from a family where maybe the parents overextended themselves, got into debt. A lot of those things are generational.
Yeah.
So they are passed from generation to generation. Sometimes you learn from the mistakes that your parents made. Sometimes you don't.
Yeah.
Sometimes you repeat them. So really, communication about money is the biggest issue that we find.
So communication, I also got to think accepting the fact that you're gonna view things differently.
Absolutely.
I think for like the first year of my marriage, and by the way, I've always heard never, when you're talking about fixing marriages, never talk about your own on the radio. I've sort of as a tip, a divorced lawyer actually gave me that tip. So not that I have a divorce lawyer, it's just a friend. Anyway, let's continue. In my first year of marriage, I was convinced that we had to think the same, which you get over that pretty quickly.
It's not going to happen.
No.
It's probably not.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of compromise. So typically in a marriage, what you'll find is you have one person who's the saver, one person who's a spender.
So I am the spender,
Okay.
and my wife is the saver.
Okay.
What about within your situation?
I would say my husband used to be the spender, became the saver.
Okay.
And I've always been the saver.
Okay, so now you've got two savers.
Now, but not always.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, and I think part of this too is you look at different backgrounds as you try to say, did someone come from money or did they come from no money? I think the assumption that when someone comes from money, that then all of a sudden they know what they're doing, that's a bad assumption.
That is a very incorrect assumption. With money comes responsibility, right?
Right.
And so people that come from money sometimes don't understand the value of a dollar either.
Sure.
And so they may get into a marriage where maybe they're on a tighter budget, incomes aren't as high, have expectations that they're going to be able to afford everything that their parents afforded, not realizing that it took their parents 40, 50 years to
Yeah.
accomplish what they've accomplished. And so then that creates conflict.
Yeah, I guess because when you start realizing, understanding comfort and a lifestyle, you're a teen or a young adult, and
Right.
your parents have battled that entire time to establish whatever lifestyle they provide for you.
Exactly.
You don't see the work.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's tough. And so how can a couple who isn't seeing eye to eye on these things, like obviously they acknowledge they're different,
Yes.
they acknowledge that communication is key, but how do you even like bridge the gap?
So what I would start with doing is sitting down and bringing a list of all of your monthly expenses
Okay.
and starting with a budget. So
I thought you were going to say like a list of grievances.
well, maybe that too.
That would be, that seemed like a bad idea. Okay, so a list of expenses.
Yes, list of expenses. I would say pull the ideal budget off your website, download that bad boy, right?
Yeah.
PeteThePlanner.com. There you go.
This is working out very well for me, Nicole. This is a great guess.
I was just going to say she's
and-
writing content.
Yes.
Download that and sit down and write down the fixed things, fixed expenses every month.
But how do you? Okay, so let's say I've been married. I've been married. It's my 18th year of marriage.
Right.
But let's say I've been married for 30 years, and
Mm-hmm.
I've now come to the realization that we don't do well with this. I can't just like show up at dinner with my list of our budget. Like,
Right.
how do you start a conversation that should have taken place 30 years ago?
I think it's coming to the point of recognizing that there's a problem.
Yeah.
And when you don't communicate, problems get swept under the rug for years and
Yes.
years and years. And then sometimes you just have a breaking point of, oh my gosh, we are so many thousands of dollars in debt. We thought we might be heading towards retirement at this point, and now it's looking like maybe that's not a reality. I think it's actually just sitting down and being honest with your partner and saying, this is not working.
So when you talk to folks about this, so how does this go down? Like one person figures it out before the other person, and then it's on them to tell the other person.
Sometimes both partners know they're in trouble.
Well, I think
Yeah.
right, but it's yeah, you got to
Yeah.
think people are smart. They
Yeah.
know it's not. And by the way, just because they're not communicating well about money doesn't mean their other communication is healthy and clean.
Well, and a lot of times it's more about the process and less about the topic. And
Oh, tell me more.
So the topic might be money.
Okay.
The topic might be sex. But the process is how you're actually communicating. And so if you don't know how to communicate and then you are coming at each other from different perspectives, if you've got one person in the marriage who is the pursuer and one person who's the distancer.
Oh my gosh, I feel like we're learning a lot. Should we? Okay, pursuer and the distancer. Pursuer is the person that wants to what?
They want to hash it out right this second.
Okay, and the distancer is just like, give me some space.
Give me some space. I need some time to process this. Maybe they're not people that can process right in the moment. Maybe they escalate and they need some time to cool off and be able to clear their head. So what you find a lot of times is there's a stance that happens, right?
Yeah.
So you've got one person who's like, we're going to sit down, we're going to talk about this money problem, we're going to hash it out, and you've got another that's like, ooh,
not
wait a
right
second,
now.
not doing it, I'm going to walk away, I'm going to leave the house, I'm going to,
Yeah.
and then I'm not going to come back and talk about this again.
What's the party called that preemptively accepts the apology of the other person as the disagreement starts? What's the, like if I were to say, Mrs. Planner, I don't know where this conversation's going, but I already accept your apology. Like what do you call that person?
I would say you probably need therapy.
Yeah. It's a couch sleeper. We call that the couch
Yes,
sleeper.
Guest room, bedroom.
Yeah, guest bedroom guy. Yeah, this is fascinating, right? Because if people are disagreeing about money, they probably are disagreeing about sex and their in-laws and children. And money just happens to be the one you got to deal with on a day-to-day basis,
Yes.
or you get in big trouble.
Exactly. So there's a possibility if you find yourselves doing this dance, if you are unable to work through major conflicts like money, that you would benefit greatly from having a third person involved.
Okay, so this is either the best question I'm going to ask you today
Okay.
or the worst. And there's no middle ground with me.
All right.
I want to know when you're stressed about money and things aren't going well, and then the solution is let's go spend money and talk to a third party.
Right.
Like that has to bring even more stress in the situation.
Sometimes, yes. And a lot of times it is finances that will keep people from going to therapy. But here's the thing I always tell people, and this is even true for people who are looking at premarital counseling
Sure.
and investing in that. If you don't spend the money on this, is your marriage going to survive?
Oh, see, that's a really good point. And almost, yeah, okay. So, yeah, all right. That's a good question to ask yourself. Okay.
Right.
So, if you're listening right now and you're thinking, man, my marriage communication isn't going so well, what's the trend report show us? This is getting worse because unless you do something drastically different, it won't get better.
Right. So it's about investing on the front end
Yeah.
for a long-term return.
Isn't there also, I mean, and I would assume that both people want to have to commit to wanting to be married and reconciled?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you come into counseling with one foot already out the door,
Right.
there is not a whole lot your therapist can do to help you.
And can you sniff that out pretty soon?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, these are the people that come in, they haven't filled their paperwork out, they're sitting with their arms crossed on the end of the couch.
This all sounds like me, except I have a healthy marriage. I just don't like paperwork.
Yeah.
What if I show up in your office and like, I just didn't fill it out, and you're like, oh my God, he wants divorce. I'm like, no, I'm just lazy.
No, I mean, sometimes that truly
Okay.
is the case.
So with men, it's just they're lazy.
No,
Just me.
just you.
Okay. So they don't fill out their paperwork. Their arms are crossed. What
They
else?
give attitude, they
Yeah,
are not
geez.
cooperative.
This is all me. Go continue. I'm sorry.
You know, and usually the first therapy session is just an assessment of tell me your backstory, tell me
Yeah.
about how you guys met, tell me about kind of what made you fall in love with the other person, how do you view marriage, through what lens, and tell me kind of what's been going on lately and how can I help you?
Yeah.
And so when you have people who are resistant, and this can be either person,
Yeah.
when you have people who are resistant, it's very difficult to say, hey, I think we can work with this, because when you have one person who's like, ooh, I don't think I want to be here,
Yeah.
and I already think maybe I'm kind of checking this as a box, but
Yeah.
I'm not really committed to doing, maybe the homework or, taking any of the feedback you give into suggestion, like, there's not a whole lot a therapist can do to help you.
All right, so let's do this. Let's take a break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about best practices for newlyweds. So, like, we've just talked about, like, you've been doing this for decades and how to fix it. What if
Right.
you just started? You're about to get started. And also, I'm going to ask if anyone's pulled out their phone in a session with you and you see their Match.com profile. So we'll ask that next with Christy Fogg. Clinical social worker.
Yes,
Yes, who also does therapy and counseling for families.
correct.
I said it right. All right, all that's next on the Pete the Planner Show. I am Pete the Planner.